Preparing live stream. Almost there.
Mhm.
All right. Good afternoon and welcome everyone on this post snow weekend day. Welcome to Nutrition with Elena. And with for no further ado, I will turn it over to her.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. It's a great day to make some soup, right? That's one of our recipes. And I am going to get started with kind of prepping the soup just so it can cook while we're talking. I have to check. I did just turn my barley on and I hear it boiling. So I want to turn it down to a simmer until it's, for maybe about 10-15 minutes. So let me do that real quick. There we go. And I knew we moved the lid out of the way, but I didn't know where I put it. Found it. Okay. Just turn it down. Great. So I'm going to get started with the base for the soup. So that is going to be, we're going to do like the Italian blend for like the base. So it's going to be the carrots, onion, and celery. So we'll get started with that. There's all sorts of ways that you can make minestrone or minestrone soup. And this is just kind of one of the ways. But you can add different fresh herbs and, using different kinds of beans, different types of greens. So you can really make it pretty versatile and different grains too. So today we're going to be using a barley. I apologize for my knife. My other one was dirty. um, but we are going to do our barley for this, but you're also, kind of more of a traditional minestrone would have the large couscous in it, or you could use like the little like acini di bibi, like a little circular pasta. And if you're gluten free, you can choose something gluten free, even like a quinoa or millet even would work well. So we just get chopping with these veggies. So we're going to do about 2 ribs of celery and two carrots and then one medium onion. I also have started my beet roasting in the oven before we hopped on, just so that gives it enough time to cook and then cool enough to put it in with the salad. So I have that going. I have it at 390. I just chopped it, like diced it into like probably half-inch cubes. And then that will just be, you know, I did like maybe 2 teaspoons of olive oil on it, and then I'm just letting it roast until it's soft, and then we'll put it on the salad. Put everything over here. So for the barley, I did just get a pearled barley. Pearled barley is pretty cool because it does retain the fiber throughout the grain. So when I know it's processed, when it's pearled, it's still having a good bit of fiber, which is nice. And actually, barley has a lot of what we call the soluble fiber. So soluble fiber helps to lower cholesterol. It also helps to improve gut health, like the gut microbiome. And it's really, I feel like an underutilized grain. It does contain gluten, so obviously for some people they can't consume it, but in general, it's really nice. I find that the texture is nice. It can be a good substitute for things like pasta and even rice. And you can get the more intact form of that. So I've gotten the Shiloh Farms brand before. And it's called whole less barley. So it does have a little bit of the outer shell, and it does have, I'm still not sure why they call it hull less, because to me that means no hull, but um it still seems to have some of the hull on it and has more fiber than the pearled version. But with that, it does take a little bit longer to cook. So that's just something to keep in mind, but it is really nice, and the texture is really um, just like a little bit more like chewy, kind of like another intact grain, while the pearl barley tends to be a little bit softer. Um, I just have my pot heating. I'm going to put in 1 tablespoon of olive oil. Heating up, I am going to start prepping my garlic. So we're gonna do 2 cloves of garlic minced. Once I get this in here, I am gonna check on my barley because it is seeming to overflow a little bit on my stove. Go see where that's at. It's always fun when it does that. I feel like my stove constantly has some sort of grain that overflowed on it and some sort of like lentil. So let me go give that a little stir. All right, that needs a couple more minutes. Great, so while this is going, let's get that garlic ready. So we're gonna do 2 cloves of garlic. You can certainly do more. Um, but that's just what I'm doing today. That in here. This is just my little mincer. You can certainly just chop it if you don't have one like this. And while this is going, so we have that ready to go. Once the onions have cooked a little bit more, we'll add the garlic. But in the meantime, I'm going to get the tomatoes chopped. So we're going to be about the equivalent of about 2 Roma tomatoes. So I just have these smaller ones. So I'm going to do about 6 of these, maybe 7 or 8. Do 7. And we're just going to dice these. Even though these are kind of like a specialty tomato, still not, they're still not summertime tomatoes. Something you can do in the summer though to kind of get that really yummy flavor for this time of year is you can actually freeze tomatoes either diced or even freeze them whole. I've frozen ones whole before and then just kind of let them thaw in the fridge and then just, slice them up a little bit and throw them into soups. They're obviously not going to be good for anything raw, but they're still really nice in a soup or a stew or, some sort of a hot dish. Great. All right. The barley, I did a half cup of the dried barley. So the pearl barley, if you haven't purchased it before, you can just get it in the dried bean section at the grocery store. And again, per serving, it's 5 grams of fiber. So really fiber dense option. And as you can see, the totals for this soup, we end up getting about 10 grams of fiber from this soup, which is really great. If we're trying to like hit kind of our fiber goals for the day, I usually tell people to have like roughly about 10 grams of fiber per meal. If you're mostly just eating your meals, if you're having snacks too, you could have a little less and then, some fiber in your snacks. Great. So this is looking good. I can add in my garlic now. It seems like we have a good turnout for our first class at 3 o'clock. That's nice to see.
Hi, Nina.
Hello.
Val.
Oh, wow.
Are you putting that pan on a hot plate or what? Was that
Yeah.
a stove?
Yeah, this is a hot plate.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll eventually move it to the stove, but for you guys, I wanted you to be able to see what I was doing since it's a little bit more of an intensive recipe. Yeah. Okay. So I guess normally you guys would be doing your class after this in person, but not today, and maybe also not next week because we're looking at another snowstorm, right?
I think it's Thursday.
The snowstorm is Thursday?
I think it is.
Oh, okay. I guess we'll see. Oh my goodness. We're getting hit. That's all I know. We're getting
Oh, yeah. Well, we haven't been hit in a few years,
I know
very
it's been
little.
some time for sure.
Yeah.
Sure has been a while. I feel like last time I had a big snowstorm was in Delaware when I lived down there. Maybe like 10, I don't know. We got a lot of snow one year down there, maybe like
I
12
think it
years
was
ago.
2016.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember just like my driveway was just a lot of work. A lot of work back then. All right, let me go check on the barley real quick so it doesn't burn. All right, so that will be ready to go and the soup is ready for it. Oh, that smells good. Garlic is smelling good. All right, so now we're going to add in, we're going to add our tomatoes, our beans, our chard, and then our water. Tomatoes. I have the beans.
What
So I
what
did,
kind of beans are they?
yeah, so I did a can of kidney and a can of cannellini. When you look up kind of traditional minestrone recipes, they ask for the borlotti beans. Has anybody ever used those or seen those before?
Mm.
I'm sure I can find them somewhere, but I want to because they look nice. They're like a rounder, like a darker reddish bean.
Oh,
But I don't think they're like super easy to find. Probably more like in a specialty store or something. Great.
now
And then
they're charred.
Yep, so this is chard. I'm going to put some chard in next, and you can really use any green that you have on hand. I tend to like chard a lot, so I'm going to use that, but you could use kale or collard greens, spinach, whatever you have. I'm just going to take it off of the ribs. And roughly 3 cups. This is probably going to be a little less because I think I used a little more in my practice recipe than I thought I would. And I certainly was not going out and fighting the crowds just to get a little more bit of charge. So it was wild this past couple days at the stores. Okay. So I'm just going to chop this roughly.
So if someone doesn't like chard, can you substitute kale, spinach, or some other greens? What do you recommend?
Yeah, kale, spinach, collard greens are nice. Bok choy, use all, whatever kind of green that you like. Obviously, spinach is usually like the most neutral if you're not big on greens. It just, it doesn't have much of a flavor to it. But yeah, play around with it. And even like in the summertime, if you make this, if you have something that's more in season or you're growing something, you can certainly use that. Now I'm putting about 4 ounces, or I'm sorry, 4 cups of water in here. And I also am going to add the salt. So we're going to do a half teaspoon of salt. So as you can see, this recipe has about 375 milligrams of sodium. So certainly less than store-bought soup would be like canned soups. But if you wanted a little bit less, you could always put less salt into it. This is not the best way to do my salt, but it's fine. Okay, great. And then we're going to bring this to a boil. I'm going to bring it to a boil on the stove though, because it's not probably ever going to boil here. And then once it boils, we're going to let it come down to a simmer. And then we're going to add the cooked barley and just let it simmer a little bit more. And then it'll be all set for a yummy, yummy dish to try. Now you can also do some Parmesan. So some people add it at the end. Some people cook it with a Parmesan cheese rind, and that kind of gives that flavor throughout it. Or you can certainly just opt to not use any cheese, and it's still delicious and very nutritious. So I'm going to go put this on the stove. And I'm just going to check on my beets real quick. So the beets are moving right along in there. They're doing well. Barley over there for when it's ready. Great. So let me just switch recipes here. And we'll do our talk and then get back into making the salad recipe. So I'm just going to share my screen, and pardon me just reaching over because I don't have my mouse. People in my house have stolen my mouse. So we're just going to do it this way. Can everybody see that? Great.
Yes.
Great. So we're going to talk about the new year. And let me get this out of my way so I don't burn myself on the hot plate. Sorry. Had more injuries than I like to admit during my cooking classes over the years. All right. So for the new year, we all kind of like to do maybe a little reset, even though it's, I don't know, the weather's not always great, it's cold, but it feels fresh sometimes. So we like to kind of think about maybe what are some positive changes that we might make. And I think the best way to look at things is to focus on progress, not perfection, right? So, making those little changes, sustaining them, adding more in as we go, that can lead to long-term impact that's sustainable, right? So when we try to do everything at once, it often's, great for maybe a week or two, and then it just gets like, oh, I don't really want to do all of these things. I'm just going to give up because it's like not worth it. So it's better to kind of build those small changes and build on those over time. Um, and then kind of just make those long-term sustaining habits. And then also, in the new year, we want to focus on just kind of taking care of ourselves, right? Nourishing our body. We want to support our energy, our mood, our health, and really just, lean into kind of caring for ourselves a little bit. I know that's a struggle for a lot of people, maybe taking care of other people and not, caring as much for ourselves. And then eating more whole foods, right? I feel like that's always a good goal for the new year. Um, Adding more fruits and veggies. So aiming for those different colors, like, eating from the rainbow, we say. So, these deep, today we're going to have some deep greens, right? We have some deep reds coming with that salad. There's a deep oranges in the soup with the carrots. So just trying to eat from those different plant foods, because all of those colors really represent certain plant chemicals that do different things in our bodies, clear out toxins and repair cell damage and all sorts of important things that we can, step by step, day by day affect by just adding these foods into our diets. Choosing whole grains over refined grains, right? So we talked about intact grains. So those things like the farro and the wheat berries, brown rice, quinoa, barley, even the pearl barley, like we said, has a little bit more fiber than some of those more refined grains, oats, and then including lean proteins and plant-based options. So I think we do a lot in these classes with, building in some of those plant-based options, recipes with beans and lentils and tofu. And people are generally like, people generally don't have a lot of trouble kind of making like a good chicken dish or something like that. But some of these other dishes, sometimes require a little bit more creativity or, different ways to prepare it so that people, find it to be exciting. And building balanced plates. So we still want to focus in on half of our plate being veggies and fruits, a quarter being our protein, a quarter being whole grains, and then having some healthy fats within that, like some olive oil, nuts, avocado. So building those into our meals and maybe our small snacks if we're including any snacks. And improving protein intake. So this is something that some people will struggle with. And as we age, protein becomes more important. So we know that just to preserve that muscle mass in aging, eating enough protein is important. So we want to have some type of protein with every meal. We want to typically shoot for, around 20 or a little bit more, 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal if we can. And that really helps us with, building that muscle, maintaining like our satiety. So helping us. So protein along with fiber really helps with our satiety and also helping with controlling our blood sugar. And we want to spread it evenly throughout the day, like we said, because we can only utilize 20 to 30 grams at once, so we don't want to just wait till dinner and then have like 8 ounces of chicken, and it's not going to be as well utilized as if we were to spread our protein throughout the day. So I like to talk to a lot of people. Like I'm currently working with a lot of clients who are on those the weight loss medications, right? And some of you, or you may know somebody that are on them, and sometimes people are only eating once a day. And I always like, I'm working with them, eat more frequently, because you're not hitting those goals with only eating once a day, even though that appetite's not there. You still have to kind of eat 3 times a day just to be able to hit your goals. And then including sources like eggs and yogurt and fish, beans, nuts, tofu, tempeh, all good sources of protein. Meal planning. So that can be really helpful this time of year, just to like have, things in stock, especially when the snowstorms are coming. But just in general with budget, and I was watching this like thing on food prices, and basically how the companies have figured out how to like squeeze Americans and make food costs more, and like just like know everybody's kind of tolerance point to where they'll, that maximum that they'll spend. So that's why they said that we've seen like a 30% rise in food costs since 2020, which tracks with, I'm sure, what most of us are feeling at the grocery store. So meal planning can really help us kind of knowing what we're getting, obviously, before we go to the store, can help us, prevent the impulse buying and kind of like the last minute runs where we need to grab things because we don't have ingredients. So with meal planning, we always want to see what we have in stock first. I like to make a list of meals that people in the house will eat. So, and you might have like, if it's on have like an Excel spreadsheet and like links to the recipes or whatever. So that might be a way for you to kind of keep track of things. And then if there's things that you want to try, making a list of new recipes that you would like to try, and then you can kind of like sprinkle those in, throughout the weeks when you're doing your planning. So make a weekly meal plan using foods you have on hand first and recipes that you know you will like. So that's like the first step. And maybe like adding the one new recipe a week in. And then you're going to make that grocery list based on your schedule that you've come up with. And you can always, even do your breakfast and your lunch too. It's really helpful to kind of have all of those things. And hydration was good. I was just about to grab a sip of water. So drinking enough can be hard in the winter, right? I don't know if any of you have experienced that. You're trying to hit a certain fluid goal and you're just maybe not as thirsty as you are in the summer if you're outdoors and working and things. So it's something that we generally have to kind of actively work on to get enough in. And, sometimes we just feel really dry and, the heating's dry, whatever our houses are being heated with dries us out as well. So, keeping those water bottles with us can be helpful. Trying some warm beverages. So that can really help people to hit their goals. So maybe you schedule that you always have like a cup of tea in the evening, a cup of herbal tea or something like that. Some people do well with like some warm water with lemon in the mornings, just thinking of different ways to kind of boost that fluid intake up. And then, flavoring the water can help. So adding lemon or lime juice to things, trying seltzer with a splash of juice or like a flavored seltzer. Starting our day with at least 8 ounces of liquid can be kind of a great starting point to play around with. And then added sugar. So added sugar is always something that, we can be paying attention to because it's in a lot of things. And thankfully, like we've said before, they're now putting it on the labels so we can actually see the amount of added sugar that's in foods. The soup just came to a boil. I'm just going to go down and cover it and turn it down to a simmer. So just give me a quick minute for that. Out my beets as well. Pull over here. Great. Okay. So for the added sugar piece, we want to, if we're using it in coffee and tea, we can gradually decrease the use of it. So for example, if we're getting it out, maybe at one of the, coffee places, we can ask for like less sugar, just 1 pump of flavor versus maybe we're ordering like something that's already pre-flavored. You can always kind of switch and just do like 1 pump of your flavor, which 1 pump of that stuff usually has about 4 grams of added sugar. So, we want to try to aim for like less than 25 grams per day if we can. For other beverages, like maybe iced tea, we can dilute it with water. We can cut regular soda if we're drinking that with seltzer water. We can try fruit flavored tea infused in cold water. So I like the Celestial Seasonings teas for this. Like the fruit zingers are really nice in cold water. Or there's the Bigelow Botanicals cold herbal infusions. Those are really nice. If we're moving, if we're doing our like different dairy products, we can choose plain yogurt instead of, flavored. Or if we're only really liking flavored, we can kind of get some plain and mix it in with it just to cut that. I'm big on just kind of cutting it. So like, you can still have a little bit of the sweet, but you're going to cut it with something, mix it with something to bring down that total sugar content. And then choosing naturally sweet foods like fruit. So maybe something like that, if you're used to a dessert, maybe trying a little fruit after dinner, seeing if that helps. Reading those labels and watching for the hidden sugars that are in like condiments, especially tend to have a lot of added sugar, but there's always options out there on the shelves that are less. So it just kind of involves us looking at the labels, trying to see if we can reduce it a little bit. And enjoying treats intentionally, not automatically, right? So let's not, automatically grab something sweet after we eat. Maybe it's something that we've planned for, or, we're going to eat mindfully and, infrequently, right? Maybe not every night, but maybe once or twice a week or something like that. And then focusing on gut health. So we want to add fiber-rich foods like beans and veggies and whole grains. So all of that is fuel for that good bacteria in our gut. And we know when our gut is calm and the good bacteria is growing, we are, just all sorts of things work better in our bodies. We feel better, our mood's better. It can help with our blood sugar control and our cholesterol control and all sorts of things. And then including fermented foods like yogurt or kefir, and that will bring that good bacteria into the gut. And then we'll have those fiber-rich foods to fuel that good bacteria. And whenever we're working on gut health, we want to make changes gradually. Because if we do everything at once, we can have some real GI distress that becomes uncomfortable. So some sustainable goals for the new year. We want to choose habits that we can maintain long term, celebrate our consistency over perfection, and just know like nutrition is about fueling us, not limiting what we can do. So just kind of keeping focused on those things. As always, some different recipes here. You guys have this handout, and we're going to make our second recipe now. Anybody have any questions on those? Great. All right. So what we're doing now is
One quick question.
Mhm.
So if I'm trying to maintain low acidic and inflammation.
Mhm.
Do you have suggestions for what types of foods to be doing for that
Sure.
type of diet?
Yeah, so I mean, really, the Mediterranean diet is the best of options for that. That website that I had up on that last slide, the oldwayspt.org, that is a really nice website for the Mediterranean diet. Lots of recipes, lots of educational resources on there. But yeah, anything that's going to be more plant forward is going to reduce kind of the acidic load of our diets, limiting kind of our animal products, and sugar can help with that. Now keeping in mind our body is very good at like adjusting on its own with, acidic foods and kind of correcting that, and not necessarily changing the whole pH of our bodies, but still really great to just have more plant forward Mediterranean diet. That's really good for inflammation. We're using ginger today, and ginger is actually really great for inflammation. So some people
Right,
will
and
use,
turmeric and.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, definitely. Great.
okay, thank you.
Sure, of course.
Like
Uh,
Cindy, I have dietary restrictions. I had obstructive kidney stones, so I'm on a low oxalate diet. So I
hmm.
can't eat beets, I can't eat chard, I can't eat beans, and I think beans can be inflammatory, Cindy. And I think tomatoes can be acidic. So, I have to make a bunch of substitutions as well.
Yeah, beans are actually really great. There's some people talk about the lectins, but there's not really anything. When we kind of look at all of the cultures in the world that are the healthiest of cultures, they're all eating beans. So I definitely don't worry about beans for that. But if you do have if you have to limit the oxalates, there are very specific things that you have to limit for sure. But just in general, the beans are a good option. Great. So we'll get started with this salad. So I just did a spinach and arugula mix for this, just because you're still getting like the taste of arugula, but it's not all arugula, which can be a little bit of an overpowering taste, and the spinach just adds a nice balance to it. So I'm just going to put our spinach and arugula into a large bowl. And then I do have some walnuts that I did toast already, so I'm going to grab those out. I don't have quite as much as I thought I did, but that's okay. I have some others that aren't toasted, and it doesn't have to be toasted. It just added a little bit of a different flavor to it. But if you are going to toast your walnuts, you just put it in for about 10 minutes. When you have those beets in at 390, you can put the walnuts in for the same amount of time, the same heat, but just a little less time. Great. So now I'm going to make my dressing real quick. So let's get that started. So that is going to be some olive oil. So I'm going to do 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil. I'm going to do 3 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar. Now this balsamic vinegar is a little bit on the sweeter side. If yours is not, you might want to add maybe just like a half of a teaspoon of honey to this, just to sweeten it up a little bit. And that's only going to add in like 2 grams of sugar for the whole dressing, but it will give it just a little tiny bit of sweet. And then we're going to do 1.5 tablespoons of water. And that's something I always like to do in my salad dressings, just because it does just make it go a little farther without needing as much oil. And I even tell my clients, if people really love certain salad dressings and they're looking to kind of just cut their calories a little bit, diluting salad dressings with some water can work really well, or even some vinegar. So if you have like a really thick one that you like, you could always add some white vinegar to it, or some water, just making it a little bit thinner and having it go a little farther. Great. And now we're gonna do this is what I feel like really makes it nice is our ginger. So we're gonna do about a teaspoon of minced ginger in here. Just rinse this off. So first I'm gonna just cut the skin off of my ginger. Like this doesn't work great for grating it, but we're gonna give it another try. I guess that's doing okay. So we're gonna want about a teaspoon of this. Great. Okay, so I have that ready to go. Do our walnuts. So we're gonna do about a half cup of walnuts. I'm just gonna break these up a little bit when I add them to the salad. We're adding some healthy fats into this. We have our greens, we have our bright deep red veggies and fruit. We're gonna add some goat cheese, obviously optional if you're fully plant-based. You can opt to not utilize it. And with goat cheese, a little bit goes a long way. So we're just gonna kind of break off some pieces of this. Feta would also work really well in here if you're not a goat cheese person. So about a quarter cup is what we're putting in here. At least the sun's out now. Maybe we'll get a little bit melting. Great. All right, and then the other thing we're going to add in is some pomegranate seeds. And this pomegranate it's like a giant pomegranate. I got it at Wegmans. I was like, it was a little pricey, but it was so big that I was like, this is worth it. So I'm just gonna put a couple of the seeds in. So just kind of working my way around the parts that are open. And this just adds a little pop of additional like sweetness. Oh boy. A little bit of additional sweetness to the salad. Pomegranates are in season right now, which is nice. So they're a little bit more affordable. This one's still looking pretty good. I've had it open like this for probably a little less than a week in the fridge, and it's still has some really nice ruby red seeds on it. Great. And now we're just going to add our beets. So we have our roasted beets. I wish all of you could come enjoy this, because this is a lot to just have in the random middle of an afternoon in my house. But this is our salad. Great. Anybody have any questions?
Did you buy the arugula and the spinach, were they mixed together, or did you make that mix yourself?
Yeah, I bought it mixed together. So this is the Aldi brand. I don't know if you guys have Aldi's near you, but yeah, it's great. Always good prices there. So that's a good mix to find. Or you can make it yourself if you don't have the mix near you.
Are pickled beets okay?
Yeah, you could put them in. Yeah, it'll be less work because you're not going to have to do the whole roasting situation.
Yeah, I like the taste. I was just worried about maybe the sugar.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at your labels, you know. I haven't looked at the pickled ones lately. I see like the canned, like the jar ones, you can find
Mhm.
that pretty easily.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen the pickled ones to be able to like look at the label. But take a peek and see. Great. Anybody else have any questions?
What about the pomegranates, like when they're not in season? I've bought them frozen before, but they're kind of mushy. Like, any recommendations for pomegranate seeds that are not fresh?
Yeah, I mean, so that Palm company will sell them in that little like plastic container in the freeze, like in the fridge section sometimes. But yeah, the frozen ones are not. I can't even figure out what I bought them once and I'm like, I don't even know what I would use these for, because you like don't want to put them in a smoothie because they just leave all the hard seeds in your smoothie and
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I mean it's kind of like when they're in season. You could do like a citrus on here too instead. That would be nice, like some type of oranges, or even like an apple, like a green apple would probably be nice. Yeah. Grapes, any type of fruit I think would work really well with this. Awesome.
Besides walnuts, what other nuts or seeds would you suggest?
I mean, pumpkin seeds, pistachios, almonds, really anything that you like, sunflower seeds. Yeah, pretty flexible. And then I did forget to mention, so my soup's been simmering, but I'll just add that barley and that'll complete that. And then the soup freezes really well too. So, pop it in your freezer. I keep meaning to get these, like, I don't know if anybody's heard of like the super cubes. Has anybody heard of those? It's like the silicone trays where you can put your soup and then pop it out once it's frozen. I keep meaning to get those, but I have not yet. So I just
Yeah.
use bags or
I have
whatever.
a family member who's using those to make baby food.
Oh, nice.
She's
Perfect.
making her own baby food, but she's using those super cubes. Yeah.
Oh, that's smart. That's great. Wonderful.
So before everyone got on the call, I was telling Elena when she sent me the recipe for the soup, I immediately made it that night for dinner. And so we actually enjoyed it through the weekend, which was the perfect weekend for that kind of
Oh,
soup. So I can say I've tasted it's very good. And I used farro instead of barley just because I happen to have some already cooked in the house. So it was very good. I highly recommend it.
Great.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining.
And in next month, I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I don't know the date when we meet in February. I do know it is the fourth Monday.
It's
We'll
the
be talking
23rd.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Nina.
Yeah.
And I know in March it'll be the 23rd as well, since it's a 28-day month. But
Yep.
so February we'll be talking about nutrition for heart health. I know we talked about some of that today, but we'll focus more on that. So looking forward to that. So,
Great.
all
Great.
right. Thank you so much, Elena. And if anyone has any questions they didn't get to ask today, you can always email me and I'll make sure we get it answered for you.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank you,
Thank you
Elena.
so much
Alright.
for everything.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.